The rooftop went completely silent. 300 people stood beneath the warm glow of amber lanterns, frozen in the middle of conversations that had suddenly stopped. Champagne glasses remained suspended in mid-air. Laughter disappeared. Even the music seemed to fade into the background. Everyone was staring at the same woman. She had just entered the college reunion, and she was the last person anyone expected to see. She wasn't supposed to be there, but that wasn't what shocked everyone. What shocked them was where she was going. She walked past former professors, wealthy executives, successful entrepreneurs, and classmates who had spent the entire evening proudly talking about their achievements. She ignored every welcoming hand, every smile, every camera. She kept walking toward one man standing alone near the railing, a quiet man wearing an old navy blazer with slightly worn cuffs, a man most people in the room had barely noticed. When she finally reached him, she stopped, her eyes filled with tears. She looked at his face for several seconds as though she needed to make absolutely certain it was really him. Then she whispered 2 words, "It's you." And those 2 words would force everyone in that room to completely rethink what they thought they knew about success, kindness, and the people we sometimes overlook. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, what do you think she remembered about him? And if you enjoy emotional stories about kindness, sacrifice, second chances, and unexpected moments that change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who might need this message, and subscribe to Heartfelt Years. Now let's go back to where this story really began, 20 years earlier. Nolan Adler had never been the kind of person people noticed immediately. He wasn't loud. He didn't chase attention. He didn't walk into a room expecting people to turn toward him. During college, he was simply known as the quiet student who spent more time in practice rooms and design studios than at parties. He studied acoustics and architectural design. He was fascinated by something most people never thought about: sound. The way a violin note traveled through a wooden hall, the way a singer's voice could disappear in one room and become powerful in another, the way architecture could make music feel almost alive. Nolan loved that world, but he never cared much about becoming famous for it. 20 years later, that attitude had not changed. Now in his 40s, Nolan was a single father. He lived a relatively quiet life and worked as an acoustic designer, helping restore old theaters, concert halls, churches, and performance spaces. He had never become a celebrity. His face had never appeared on magazine covers. His name rarely appeared in headlines, and that was exactly how he preferred it. So when the invitation to his college reunion arrived, Nolan almost threw it away. He wondered what the evening would be like. Would everyone compare careers? Would people talk about money? Would they ask what he had accomplished? Eventually, curiosity won. He put on an old navy blazer and drove to the reunion. The event was being held on a beautiful rooftop overlooking Chicago. Glass walls surrounded the terrace. Warm lights hung overhead. The skyline shimmered beyond the railing. Almost immediately, Nolan realized that nothing had changed. People were still competing. Only now, instead of grades and internships, they were comparing companies, houses, investments, vacations, and titles. One man proudly talked about owning multiple properties. Another discussed a recent business acquisition. Someone else was showing photographs from an expensive vacation. Nolan quietly found a place near the railing. He watched the city lights reflecting against the water. He wasn't jealous. He simply felt like he had entered a world that had never really been his. Then an old classmate named Trent approached him. Trent looked Nolan up and down. His eyes briefly stopped at the worn edges of Nolan's blazer. Then he smiled. Nolan Adler, still hiding in the corner? Nolan gave him a polite smile. "Some things don't change," Trent laughed. "So, what are you doing these days?" Nolan thought for a moment. Then he answered, "I work with rooms." Trent raised an eyebrow. "What? Does that mean?" "I help buildings sound the way they were meant to sound." Trent chuckled as though Nolan had given an intentionally vague answer. "Interesting." Then he walked away. Another former classmate asked Nolan about his career. When he explained that he specialized in acoustic design, She looked confused. She clearly expected a more impressive title. Nolan didn't explain further. He had learned a long time ago that people often listened only for the answer they wanted to hear. Later, a slideshow began playing on a large screen. Photographs of the graduating class appeared one after another. Under each photograph were career achievements: CEO, attorney, surgeon, investor, entrepreneur. Then Nolan's photograph appeared. Under his name, there was almost nothing. No famous company, no impressive title, no list of awards. A few people exchanged amused looks. Nolan simply applauded with everyone else. He didn't feel embarrassed, because the truth was something none of them knew. Nolan had never failed. He had simply chosen a different definition of success. For more than 15 years, he had helped restore some of the most remarkable performance spaces in the country. He had worked on historic theaters that were almost destroyed. He had transformed forgotten concert halls. He had restored the sound of old churches. He had worked on buildings that audiences traveled hundreds of miles to experience. But Nolan never wanted the spotlight. When awards were offered, he often declined them. When journalists asked for interviews, he usually refused. He believed the building deserved the attention, not him. His philosophy was simple. If people walked into a concert hall and forgot about the architecture because the music moved them, then he had done his job. That evening, however, nobody knew any of that. To the people on that rooftop, Nolan was simply the quiet man in the old blazer. Eventually, he decided to leave. He picked up his coat. He was almost at the door when suddenly the rooftop became silent. Nolan looked around. The glass entrance doors had opened. A group of security personnel entered first, then several photographers appeared behind them. Whispers spread through the room. One name passed from person to person: Natalie Saurin. Everyone knew that name. Natalie was one of the most successful businesswomen in the country. Her company had grown into a global entertainment empire. She had appeared on magazine covers. She had negotiated major international deals. She had become enormously wealthy. And tonight, she had chosen to attend her college reunion. The room changed instantly. People straightened their jackets. Women adjusted their hair. Former classmates suddenly remembered old friendships they had forgotten for 20 years. Trent even looked as though he was preparing a speech. But Natalie wasn't interested in any of them. She walked into the room and immediately began searching. Her eyes moved across the crowd, past the professors, past the executives, past the cameras. Then she saw him, Nolan, standing alone near the railing. Her entire expression changed. She stopped for a brief moment. Then she began walking toward him. One step, then another. The crowd slowly moved aside. Nobody understood what was happening. Nolan noticed everyone staring. He turned around, and then he saw her. At first he thought she was looking for someone standing behind him, but there was nobody there. Natalie continued walking, straight toward him. When she reached the railing, she stopped. Her eyes were filled with tears. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Natalie whispered, "It's you." Nolan stared at her. Something about her face triggered a distant memory. A classroom, a library, an old practice room, but he couldn't place it. Natalie gently touched his arm. Then she asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Nolan's expression changed. He knew exactly what she meant, but nobody else did. To understand that moment, we have to go back 20 years. Natalie had not always been wealthy. During college, she was a scholarship student. Her family struggled financially. Her father ran a small recording studio that served local musicians and community groups. It wasn't a glamorous business, but it was their family's livelihood. Then one year, everything collapsed. The studio closed. The family's savings disappeared. Their financial situation became so serious that Natalie feared she would have to leave university. One cold evening, she sat alone inside a university music practice room. She held a letter in her hands. Her scholarship was in danger. She didn't know how she would pay for another semester. She was exhausted, embarrassed, and terrified that all the work she had done to reach university was about to disappear. That's when Nolan found her. He had been working late nearby. He saw Natalie sitting alone. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He simply sat several chairs away. He waited. Eventually, Natalie told him everything. Her family's financial problems, her father's failed business, her fear of leaving university. Nolan listened. He didn't give her a lecture. He didn't tell her that everything would magically work out. He simply said, "Don't make the decision tonight." Natalie didn't know what he meant. She thanked him and eventually went home. But Nolan wasn't finished. That night, he went back to his own room and looked at the one possession he truly treasured, a vintage guitar that had belonged to his grandfather. It was worth a significant amount of money. More importantly, it meant everything to Nolan. It had been passed down through his family. It was the instrument that had first inspired his love for sound and acoustics. But Nolan made a decision. He sold it. He took the money and went to a professor he trusted. Then he asked the professor to arrange an emergency scholarship for Natalie. There was only one condition. She could never know who had paid for it. The professor was stunned. He asked Nolan why he would sacrifice something so important. Nolan simply answered that a guitar could be replaced, but a person's future couldn't. A few days later, Natalie received a letter. Her scholarship had been saved. She cried with relief. She continued her education. She graduated with honors. And Nolan never told her what he had done. Their lives eventually moved in different directions. Natalie went to New York, then London. She worked long hours. She built a small entertainment company. At first, almost nobody believed it would succeed, but it did. The company grew. Then it expanded internationally. Eventually, Natalie became one of the most successful women in the industry. Yet there was always one question she couldn't answer. Who had saved her scholarship? Who had quietly given her the chance to continue? For 20 years, she wondered. She asked the university. She contacted former professors, but the records remained confidential. Then, 8 months before the reunion, the professor who had helped Nolan passed away. Before his death, he left Natalie a letter. Inside was the truth, and one name, Nolan Adler. Natalie read the letter several times. She remembered him, the quiet student, the man who had once sat beside her in an empty practice room, the person who had listened when everyone else seemed too busy to notice. She immediately began searching for him. What she discovered surprised her. Nolan wasn't unsuccessful. He had simply avoided publicity. His work had transformed some of the finest performance spaces in the country. He had quietly become one of the most respected acoustic designers in his field. And then, Natalie discovered that their 20th reunion was approaching. She knew she had to go. Not for publicity, not for business, for Nolan. So that night she walked across that rooftop to find him. Now the entire room was watching. Nolan finally understood. He looked at her and said quietly, "You found out." Natalie nodded. 20 years. Her voice trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Nolan looked down for a moment, then he answered, "Because I never wanted you to feel like you owed me your life." Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want anything from you," he continued. "I just wanted you to have the chance to build your own future." The room became completely silent. Nolan explained that if Natalie had known about the scholarship, she might have spent years believing that her success belonged partly to him. He didn't want that. He wanted every achievement to belong to her. Every company she built, every decision she made, every success she earned, all of it was hers. Natalie could barely hold back her tears. Then she turned toward the room. Everyone was watching her. She took a breath and said something nobody expected. She announced that her company was preparing to build a massive new performing arts and cultural center, and she wanted Nolan to lead the acoustic and spatial design, not because she owed him, not because of the scholarship, because she had studied his career. She knew his work, and she believed he was the best person for the project. Nolan initially refused. He told her she didn't need to repay him. Natalie smiled. "I'm not repaying you." She handed him a document. Nolan opened it. His name was already written under the position of Principal Design Authority. The decision had been made months earlier. Natalie looked at him. "I didn't choose you because you once helped me. I chose you because you are extraordinary at what you do." For the first time that evening, Nolan had no answer. The man everyone had quietly underestimated was suddenly standing at the center of everyone's attention. But Nolan didn't change. He went to work. He approached the new project exactly as he had approached every other project. Quietly, patiently, carefully. He visited the neighborhood. He spoke to residents. He listened to their concerns. He refused to allow the new development to erase the history of the community. When engineers suggested demolishing an old brick jazz club to save money, Nolan refused. He found another solution. The historic building would remain. He believed progress should not require people to forget where they came from. Natalie supported him. Together they built something far more meaningful than another expensive entertainment complex. They built a place where wealthy audiences could attend performances alongside families who had lived in the neighborhood for generations. A place where young musicians could perform, where children could learn, where older residents could remember, and where the past and future could exist together. 1 year after the reunion, the center opened. Critics praised its design, musicians praised its acoustics, but the most meaningful reactions came from local residents. Some cried, some hugged Nolan. Others simply stood inside the finished building and said they finally felt that their neighborhood mattered again. Later that year, Nolan received the highest professional award in his field. For years, he had refused such recognition. This time, he accepted. As he stood on stage, he looked toward the audience. Natalie was sitting in the front row. She was smiling through tears. After the ceremony, they walked together through the quiet streets. The city lights reflected against the pavement. Natalie asked him something. "What would have happened if you hadn't helped me?" Nolan thought about it, then he smiled. "I don't know." She looked at him. "But I think you would have found your way eventually." Natalie smiled. "Why?" Nolan looked toward the city. "Because some people are too determined to disappear." They continued walking, slowly, without cameras, without reporters, without business meetings. Just two people who had crossed paths 20 years earlier and somehow found their way back to each other. Natalie stopped near the old university building, the same building where she had once sat alone, holding a letter that made her believe her future was ending. Now she stood there beside the man who had quietly helped change that future. She took his hand. Neither of them needed to say anything, because sometimes the greatest acts of kindness are the ones nobody sees. Sometimes the people who appear ordinary are carrying extraordinary stories. And sometimes success isn't measured by how many people know your name. It's measured by how many lives became better because you were there. Nolan never sold his kindness for recognition. Natalie never forgot it. And 20 years later, on a rooftop filled with people who thought they understood success, one woman walked across an entire room to find the quiet man everyone else had overlooked. She looked at him through tears and said two simple words, "It's you." Maybe that's the reminder we all need. Don't judge someone's life by their clothes. Don't measure someone's worth by their bank account. And never assume that the quiet person standing in the corner has nothing important to say. You may never know what they sacrificed. You may never know whose life they changed. And you may never know how many people are successful today because someone once chose kindness when nobody was watching. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Heartfelt Years for more emotional stories about love, sacrifice, family, second chances, and the unexpected moments that change our lives. And before you leave, tell us in the comments, kindness is never wasted, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of someone's entire future.